This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. And if you could, please do me a favor and take a moment and leave a rating and review in whatever podcast player you're listening to this on, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, doesn't matter. I would greatly appreciate it. And that feedback really helps get other listeners to the show. Also, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you feel so inclined, you can go to geekleader.com/tip and donate to the show. Thanks so much. All right, Geek Leaders. Today, I'm honored to have Erin Coupe on the show. She is an author, international speaker. She's an executive advisor, and much more. Anyway, with all that being said, Erin, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. Happy to be here.
If you don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about your background, how you got into advising, speaking, and helping leaders out.
Yeah. Well, I spent, 17 and a half years in Fortune 140 companies, most of my professional career, and started my business almost 6.5 years ago. And it was really a result of, first of all, really realizing what true leadership is not. I had a lot of terrible, terrible bosses, and that could be a fortunate or an unfortunate experience. For me, I really turned that pain into purpose, right? Because having to report to people who treated me inhumanely for no reason that was professional, it was all personal, due to insecurities and things like that. It was not my problem. However, I also learned very quickly what I would never want to be like, how I would never want to lead. With that, as I also matured in both my career and my leadership expertise, I took it upon myself to do a lot of inner work so that I could lead and show up how I did want to. And that meant, being the mother that I want to be. It meant being the partner I want to be. It meant being the leader at work that I want to be. And I knew that there was some work I had to do on me. And really, I mean, the whole business concept of what I do, what I speak about, how I advise executives, the cohorts I run, the book I wrote, it all at the very most fundamental level has to do with how we lead ourselves shows up in how we lead in the world. And that doesn't matter if you lead a company or a team or a family or a community. How you lead you will absolutely be reflected to you from the external world. So the inner work is everything. Doing the inner work transforms everything. And that has become my mission to help people really enrich their inner life so that they can enrich their outer life.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the little sayings that I always do is, whenever you get on an airplane, they go through the safety checks and they go through stuff. And one of the same things they say is in case of emergency, put your oxygen mask on first before helping others. And I think leadership's the same way. If you don't take care of yourself, you're not gonna be able to take care of your team or anybody else.
Exactly. And also, I always say this to people. I'm like, look around at let's just use your workplace environment as an example. Look around at the people who are leading. Do you want to emulate them?
Mm.
Any of them, right? And whose behavior would you say that you want to model, or whose behavior do you feel you actually want to be influenced by? And I guarantee you those are going to be the people who are calm and grounded, and the people who do not show some sort of projection or erratic displays of emotion.
Yeah.
They're going to be the people who actually show some heart and some humanity, and you feel like they care and they're present and they listen. I mean, those are the qualities of a good leader. And so they don't arrive there by accident. They understand this inner stuff we're talking about.
Yeah, I really wanna dig into that, but before we do, you mentioned something about having bad bosses, and I've been blessed to have a lot of really good bosses. I had one terrible, terrible leader that I reported to for a few years. Do you have any, like, stories that you would be willing to share about some terrible leadership, things that we
Oh.
can make sure that we don't, emulate?
Yeah, well, I mean, I have so many that it's like not even funny. I worked on Wall Street at Goldman, so I think especially in the years that I was there, what you saw happen is people be put in leadership positions because they had tenure,
Mhm.
not because they had skill at managing humans. And that happens a lot of places. I think maybe less, more so today than it used to, but it definitely it was an issue. It was a cultural issue at the time. The First of all, as a woman, unfortunately, the bad bosses I had were female,
Mm.
and that's something for the female listeners that you have to keep in mind is squashing other females because they're younger or you deem them smarter or you deem them prettier or whatever it is, whatever insecurity comes up, that is for you to look at and to heal within yourself. It is not for you to project onto someone else and try to suppress them. And I'd say the same for, men with men or men with women. Like we cannot suppress anybody and think that that is a solution to getting ahead in life or in our careers, right? So that's one. The woman that I first reported to, and I was young, I was like in my mid-20s, on Wall Street. I was actually told by her boss on day 2 of that job that I was the only or sorry, she was the only person that didn't wanna hire me out of 14 interviewers.
Wow.
And they could not come up with a professional reason from her, and so, therefore, my job was gonna be very difficult because I had an uphill battle of reporting to her. And I was literally told, "If you want to try to figure out how to not be around her much, get yourself a seat on the trading floor." And I supported the internal businesses. So in order to get a seat, they would have to pay for my seat, which means I've got to prove my value, right? And prove how much I am doing, such a good job for them so that they would pay for a seat. So within 6 months, I got that. And she asked me in one of my one-to-one meetings, she said, "What'd you do to get that?" She was so jealous. She was so envious that she had to try to see if there was something bad going on, and, she
Yeah.
wanted to always uncover something. So, I would say don't ever do stuff like that, like, don't ever project your insecurities. When you feel those, it's a human thing to feel those, right? Look at them, journal about them, reflect on them. Why do you feel that? How can you work with that within yourself? How can you actually turn that into something that is going to be helpful to you and to that person and help you build a relationship with each other and not work against you or against that person?
Yeah. Have you ever read the book, The War of Art?
Yeah,
Yeah. So in that book, they talk about the resistance, and a lot of times I always relate that to like that insecurity, that thing that you have that's preventing you from doing the thing you need to do. Whenever I feel
right.
that, it makes me feel like, well, that's the thing I need to do. So I need to go in that direction now instead of veering away from it.
I think that's a really good analogy and, kind of using that on this, inner reflection stuff.
Mhm.
When you do realize that something like that's coming up, like an insecurity and this sort of feeling of um, like ill will or jealousy or envy towards another person, it is such a sign of potential growth. But most people, what do they choose? They think, oh, this person's my enemy. I'm going to defend and protect because that's what the mind does. That's what the ego does. It goes to that place of defend, protect. That person is an outsider. That person is my enemy. I'm going to keep them, or, keep them at bay
Mhm.
instead of trying to create deeper connection and deeper trust. And what we don't realize is that when we're in that process of insecurity, the faster route to success and fulfillment and alignment is gonna be to work through the insecurity and not deal with that crap, right?
Yeah.
But people have to choose that intentionally.
Yeah, 100%. And when you think about like your boss being jealous and how'd you get that seat, things like that. What she should do is turn that into like, her leadership. You should celebrate those underneath that do something, great, because that's a reflection of the leader a lot of times. And instead of like trying to suppress those around you, you should like elevate them. And one of I was really lucky when I had my really terrible boss. I also had a really good mentor, and I got kind of lucky at how that all happened. But my mentor, told me many times, like, you've got to, if you ever want to get a promotion or you ever want to move up, you have to have somebody willing and ready to take your spot. So if they're not able to take your spot, then you're really going to struggle if you do get promoted. You have to have that succession plan set up. So you want everybody beneath you to be as good or better than you are,
Right,
coming to the
right.
role.
And you want them to grow, and I know, I've seen in a lot of my work that I do in my company, I have seen so many people actually want to, um, kind of keep people suppressed in a way
Mhm.
so that they don't grow out of the company. And I'm like, "No, no, no, that's not the answer." Like,
Right.
you want them to grow so much that, first of all, your leadership makes them want to emulate you because their loyalty and their willingness to give you discretionary effort and to do a fantastic job, like to bring their best, that's going to help all of you, right? That helps the
Mhm.
company, the team, it helps you, helps them. And those are the people that you want on your team. Those are like the A people, the stars, right?
Yeah.
And then those B people, you need them on your team too, because you've gotta have some sort of equilibrium, but you want them to work hard and feel cared about. You want them to grow, but you also understand that, like, if people grow out of the company, that's not a problem. That's actually a good thing, right? If they stay 6, 7 years and then they feel like they need to move on to something different, you've done a great job. Like, you have grown them in their career, in their roles, in their trajectory, and they're going to look back on those experiences with, hopefully some shining light, right? Like, not with, like, some of the stories that I have. But most people are gonna grow out of businesses. They're gonna go on and do other bigger and better things, and that is not problematic. Like, you deal with it as it comes up. You might be that person too, right? You may outgrow where you are.
Mhm.
So why try to keep other people in these positions that they don't need to be in forever?
Yeah, I agree 100%. There are two different kinds of people. I think some of the employees are what I call rocks, and they're going to be there all the time, and they're steady, they're consistent. They're not going to outgrow the position, but they're also not going to
Right.
get fired either. They're going to be there because
Right.
they're content with where they're at. And you have other people that I consider them to be like scaffolding. If you're building a building, you're building a structure, they're absolutely crucial for that growth of that building. But once you get to a certain point, you've got to get rid of that scaffolding, either by choice or other ways. But
Yes.
in order for it to be useful and you to be useful, they have to
Mhm.
separate. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. And some people, they don't want to leave, but you have to give them that push. And other people like are eager to do more, and you might not have anything else for them to do. Like they may have outgrown the position, the company, et cetera, and they need the encouragement to say, "Hey, you're not going to hurt my feelings to go somewhere else. I want you to do that." And that's one of the things that I try to do with my team on one-on-ones is to ask them what their career aspirations are. What do you want to do after this job? What do you want to do? Do you want to still be with this company? Do you want it to be somewhere else? What are you looking to learn? And ask those questions to see how important it is for people. And there's some people that their response is, I plan on being here until I retire. Great.
Right.
And other people are like, well, I want to get into, maybe I want to get into cybersecurity, or maybe I want to play around with AI, whatever it is. Great. That's good too.
Totally. And I
Mm.
I just recently caught up with that boss that I was telling you about, the bad boss. I
Mhm.
caught up with her former boss, and he was someone who really did see what was happening. He's the one who told me, first of all, that this was something that was going to be a battle for me. But he also gave me a lot of opportunities
Mhm.
that were due to me because I was doing such a good job on the team. And we caught up after, gosh, I have probably not have interacted with him for 12 years, and he has seen a lot of the success in my business online, through LinkedIn and what have you. And he's like, you know, I never realized some of those things that you were actually going through. He's like,
Mhm.
you didn't talk, I didn't complain. He's like, you didn't talk specifically about those things, but you would just kind of say, what else can I be doing? Like, where else can I put myself that's going to, like, help everyone on the team? And how can I uplift others around me? And rather than focusing on how awful she was, that is what I focused on. And I think that's something for the people listening who are leaders and are, or maybe they're in a management level position looking to grow in their leadership. If you're, if you do have a bad boss, like, they exist, rather than complain about it or point out all the shortcomings, where can you channel that energy towards really helping those around you? Where can you channel that energy towards helping the other leadership around you, right? And that's an important thing, because if we only focus on the problem and, like, how awful that is, all of our energy gets consumed by that. And then what are we doing when we give all of our energy to that problem? We're growing the problem in our lives. We grow it because it's literally consuming our mental space, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Versus channel that energy into, where can I do more good? Where can I add more value? How can I help uplift the others around me? That will get noticed, right? That is a true way of showing your character and your leadership capability.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It reminds me, this is a silly memory, but when you're saying things like this, how do you channel that somewhere else? I was thinking in my head about that movie 8 Mile. I know it's a really old movie, where Eminem is battling people on rap battles, and he keeps coming up with like what they're going to say against him, and what are they going to do against me, and I'll proactively say it before you, so that not only does it take away your fuel, but now it gives me fire. It's kind of like that
Mhm.
whole opposite thing. And that was one of the things that I did when I had a bad boss is I started to learn his patterns of things that he would do. So I tried to proactively get ahead of a lot of the things. Like, he would, just one example was he would go around me to people on my team and discourage them from taking PTO, one way or another. Like he would walk by and say, "Oh, I saw you put in a PTO request. This is before I even approved it." He would go up to him and it's like, I don't think that's good for your career to do that right now while we have this project going on. Just kind of shut them down, even though that person's role was, they were already done with their part of the project. It's ridiculous to even, entertain not giving them PTO, but he would do stuff like that. So I would proactively try to see how can I, get ahead of this and build something that would show progress before he could ever go and ask and before he could interact with them. And it was a difficult thing, but it helped me understand how to manage up better. And I think
Mhm.
sometimes when you have that negative experience, you can take that into a positive by saying, how can I use this to learn a new skill or learn something different?
Right. Yeah, the one bad boss I was telling you about, and, that was the main one because there were others, but
Mhm.
I learned so first of all, I had a 4 to 5 PM Friday one-to-one meeting with her. That's another thing, do not do that.
Don't do
Your
Friday
direct
morning.
reports. Like, do
Yeah.
not do that. First of all, it shows that you probably have no life yourself. But secondly, like, that's just downright mean,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, this was a culture that long before COVID. I mean, this is a long time ago, but we were in the office all the time. I was interrogated as if, like, she was an FBI professional,
Mm.
and it was every week from 4 to 5 on those Fridays, I would be asked just so many questions, and it was really difficult at first for me to, like, understand how do I even sit here and answer all of these? But within a month, I realized, okay, this woman wants 0 relationship with me and she wants to be in a transactional relationship. So I'm going to have to just figure out how to chameleon myself and be transactional with her,
Mm.
which was not in my nature whatsoever. But what I started to do is take meticulous notes all week long. I mean, I would have minimum 20 pages front and back. So I would just basically regurgitate all of my writing throughout the entire week to her. And it was almost like she's kind of when I first started doing that, she's like, "Well, why do you take so many notes?" And almost like I'm trying to, like, cover my you know what, and I'm like, "I have to do this because you ask so many questions that I wanna make sure I'm giving you every single detail." I'm like and here I'm thinking, "You've basically trained me to do this. Why are you asking me now why I'm doing this?" Don't do that to your people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great advice. So tell me a little bit about how you decided or why you decided to write the book. I can fit that in, and what does that mean to you? That title.
Yeah, so I started doing the work that I do, first of all, like I said, it was on myself in, 2017, 18, parts of 19. I don't believe we're ever done with inner work. I think we're always on a journey of evolution as human beings,
Mhm.
which is a beautiful part of life. I also know what it's like to really work against myself and to be my own worst enemy. And that was something that I was moving beyond with all of that inner work. So with that came, um, an authentic voice that I really started to sort of unleash and let speak through me. And really, I call it like the voice of my heart. It was like my spirit just started to share words that I didn't necessarily think about. And I started, first of all, on LinkedIn back when we would write articles, not posts. So this is going back to like 2018. These articles would come out from me. I would hit publish, terrified, just absolutely terrified. But then people in my network would start responding and saying, "Hey, this is really inspiring and this is like really good stuff. Can you come in and talk at a town hall at my company?" So then I would do that. And then I would be asked to do workshops. And I would do workshops. I'd be asked to advise a team of executives. So it really just led to this opportunity to grow something organically that I didn't necessarily choose, but it was right in front of me. And I realized I've got a gift at it. So fast forward, I started the business full time in February of 2020, which was, of course, could have
Perfect
been looked at
timing.
as divine timing or chaotic timing. In the long run, it was interesting because with COVID, there was definitely the mindset shift towards enhancing well-being. And my stuff doesn't focus on well-being, but it was easy to kind of like help people see that it can, right? So I really kind of virtually did a lot of that stuff with corporations throughout 2020 and parts of 2021. And then what my business truly is, which is about modern leadership and self-leadership and these human skills it takes to lead well, that just kind of grew and blossomed so much since mid 2021. The book was always in me. I mean, it has been a part of my DNA since I started the work on me years ago. The stories that I can tell because of all the clients I've worked with, those, of course, grew over time, right? And so, I could only pick a few to share in the book because you can't just make it a book all about client stories. But the book was born out of all of this work that I've done in transformation with myself and other humans. And I will say that I can fit that in is such an important phrase because it's not just words, it's a complete mindset shift.
Mhm.
The beginning of the book throughout the introduction into the entire first section, which is all about activating self-awareness. That is where I talk all about the mindset shifts that are necessary to then transform the way that you show up. It doesn't like I want people to understand so much that it's profound, but it's also very simple. The shifts that you make are so small, but they compound so much. It's like the age-old adage of would you rather have a penny every day that doubles, every day for 30 days, right?
Yeah.
Or would you rather have $1 million right now? And of course, the penny that doubles every day for 30
Mhm.
days because you'll end up with over $5 million because it compounds. That is the same way that this stuff works when it comes to mindset. So saying to yourself, I can fit that in because it matters to me versus I don't have time for that. I never have time for me. There's no time for the things that I actually want in my life. Like that mindset is so negative and it keeps you stuck, keeps you in a rut,
Mhm.
keeps you in a victimhood place versus I can fit in what matters to me because I know it deserves my energy, right? I know I wanna give it my attention. I know it's a place I want to focus, and that is a very personal thing for each and every human, but the opportunity to choose it is universal.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you 100%. How can what is something practical that leaders can do if they're having trouble fitting in the important things? I know I'll just I guess put some context to this question. When my second kid was born, I was at a company where the culture was to work really late and just stay, always be on, always have your phone with you, always be available. And I remember it was just getting too much. So I went to my boss and told my boss, and I just finished reading this book called Boundaries for Leaders, which kind of tells you a little bit about how setting boundaries. So I went to my boss and just told him straight up, said, "Hey, look, I'm going to leave between 5 and 5:30. I'm not going to check my phone or email or anything until my kids go to bed around 8:30, and then I'll check. And if there's an emergency, I'll take care of it. If not, I'm going to wait till tomorrow." And he's like, "I don't think that's going to work." I was like, "Well, let's just try it and see." And it worked, and it was just fine, and it made my life so much better and so much happier. What are some other things that people could do, like practical advice to fit the important things in?
Yeah, I mean, the book is full of these things, first
Mhm.
off, but, I think what you just described in setting a boundary is really healthy. You have to remember that boundaries are first and foremost with yourself. So where people tend to jump to is, oh, boundaries are about like telling other people how they need to treat me.
Mhm.
It's actually first about how you treat you. So the boundary initially can be, okay, I'm going to set a boundary where I'm going to be present with my family between the hours of 6 p.m. and 9 p.m. So you make that choice first, right? So then you start to not look at your phone between those 3 hours. And you start to realize over time, gosh, nothing blew up. The world is still turning.
Yep.
Like, it's incredible. I'm actually not saving lives, so it's okay, right? Now, if you are a heart surgeon or something like that, and by all means, like, that's a different story. But within context here of the business world, I mean, you set the boundary yourself first because what ends up happening is when you do that and you start to respect your own boundary, other people learn how to respect your boundaries too.
Yeah,
So
100%.
I like the example you gave, and I don't think there's a problem having that conversation, but I would say try it in your own way first and see how it goes. It's almost like that ask for don't ask for permission, beg for forgiveness later.
Yeah.
I started this in my leadership role at I was at a global commercial real estate firm, a Fortune 140, and that's the position I left when I started my business. Um I would say about a year and a half prior to leaving, as I was working on this on the side, nights and weekends and what have you. And I decided on Fridays that I was going to work from home. And this was at a time when we didn't really do that. But you know what? I thought, okay, if I don't set up meetings in the city and I save myself 2 hours of commuting on Fridays, and instead I do work that is heads down, focused. It's not reactionary, but it's not like tied up all day in person meetings, which is all we did back then I am creating space for myself to also fit in some things that I really want to on Friday afternoons. So I would basically stop working probably around like 3 o'clock on Fridays. And my kids were real young, so I still had a nanny in the house. And I would spend either, a couple hours on like self care or self maintenance, or I would run errands to get ahead of it for the weekend so that I didn't have to take time out of what I wanted to spend with my family. And it was so rewarding because it gave me more energy. It made me more present over the weekend with my family.
Mhm.
Because here I'm like, geez, I just fit in some things to care for myself and or to just check some things off the list that have to get done that are obligations that now I don't have to do and take time away from what I want to on Saturday or Sunday. Right. So it made me more productive in the long run. And that I think is a really interesting thing. And I know it's a huge takeaway from the book. People are sort of reprioritizing the things that are taking up space in their life. And then they're fitting things into these smaller spaces where otherwise maybe they would scroll on social media instead, right? Or maybe they would, kind of veg out for an hour and just not do anything. And instead they're going, I'm going to journal or I'm going to read or I'm going to put something in my life that's going to bring me value and energy. So it's it's really a matter of, like, personal reflection. What I love so much about the book I wrote and the messages I'm hearing from people about their reflections is it's not snake oil influencer strategy stuff. It's not like, "Do this and this is gonna happen." Like, I don't believe in those things, right? Like, I'm not someone that gets sold to very easily. What this is about is the tools that allow you to personally reflect and then start to design your life around what matters to you. And each and every day that could be different. Each and every day that could change, right? Like some days your job is going to be way more important than the things that you want to do personally. Or
Mhm.
some points of the day, your family is going to be way more important than your job. And I put a post on LinkedIn the other day, which people loved so much because I was talking about how last weekend my husband and my two boys went to a basketball tournament in Ohio, a 6 hour drive from Chicago. I chose not to go. And instead of feeling guilty about that or like, gosh, I'm missing out, I was at peace with that choice. I chose that because I know that I have so many incredible client engagements coming up that I want to be so fully prepared for and excited about. If I didn't have those 2 days of peace and quiet with no distractions to focus on that work, I would go into those engagements not fully energized, probably not fully present, wishing I would have done more to prepare. And I'm not going to do that to myself. Right.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think it's I think it's really important that you knew to I guess it's the reflection part, right? You had the reflection part to know that not going and giving myself time is what's more important for me to be successful.
Right. Right. And at the end of the day, there are plenty more basketball tournaments and I go
Right.
to plenty of them. And my children have two parents, right? So like it's okay.
Mhm.
And some people will look at it like, "Oh, but I love my kids so much I can't miss anything." I'm like, whoever said I don't love my kids so much, right? Like that's that mindset alone, right? It can tell you so much about where a person's at in their life. And usually people do operate out of guilt and shame, right?
Mhm.
And that's what drives a lot of people's decisions and ultimately their behavior. So when you start to, and the book does this, and when you start to look at these outdated beliefs around guilt and shame and what you choose, putting things in your life out of obligation because you just feel like that's what is expected of you. When you do that and then you end up being resentful because of those choices, like that's on you. The emotional poison that you end up spreading, whether it's at work or it's at home, that's on you. And you have to own that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Tell me a little bit about the what you call the invisible loads that people carry, that leaders carry.
Well, I think we just touched on it in
Yeah.
in many ways because, a lot of these outdated beliefs that people carry have to do with they have to be everything to everyone. They've got to be always available. There's this like constant sense of urgency that people perpetuate in their own lives. And they also perpetuate busyness, this load of if I am not always busy, I am not valuable. Or if I'm not always busy, I am not productive. And it keeps people from being present, right? I mean, they're elsewhere when they're in a meeting. You can see people's minds going places. You can see their eyes, looking at their phones. Like all these things happen because they're always trying to be somewhere they're not. And so that load is the overextension, it's the overcommitment, and it's the outdated beliefs that they're living by. And redoing those, reframing, rewiring, all the things that happen when you really take a look and reflect on the operating scripts that you're living by, you can change those. And that's the coolest thing. No one can do it for you. Only you can do it for you. And when you do it and you change those scripts into beliefs that actually serve you, into beliefs that you want to believe, you won't initially believe them. You start to believe them, just like all the old stuff. Somehow it got there, right? Somehow it was put in your brain and you started to believe it. It didn't just appear out of nowhere. So I tell people like it's like having a 5-year-old. If you want them to believe that, anything is possible in their life, you're saying that to them often. Do the same thing with yourself as an adult. Like your brain inside there's like a 5-year-old, and you're just telling it things that you want it to believe. And that is crucial and paramount when it comes to any sort of change that you want to create in your life or any sort of transformation where you're trying to grow into.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And when you talk about busyness, one of my favorite quotes is, from a book I read about 10 or 15 years ago, probably no, probably longer than that. Probably close to 20 years ago, where it said busyness is a form of laziness.
Yeah.
And I always find myself getting so busy doing things, and then I have to stop and just say, what happens if I just don't do these things? And like think about the effectiveness of what we're doing. And then I usually go through like a purge of things like this has no value, stop it. This has no value, stop it. But I still wrap myself up into that ability of, just trying to accumulate more and do more. And then I have to stop like, okay, what's the value in what I'm doing? Let's stop it and kind of reassess. And I wish I could get to the
Yeah.
point where I didn't do that, but at least I know to stop it. Kind of reassess.
Exactly. Well, that's self-awareness right there, right? Which is the first step. But yeah, I mean, activity just for the sake of trying to feel like there's momentum
Right.
is not valuable, right? Because that's what people do. It's like, "Oh, I just have to stay active and do all these things, and as long as I'm doing all these things, there's some sort of momentum behind it." In reality, it ends up being extremely draining, and then people wonder why they're so drained and why they're exhausted. And, not to say that, yeah, there's demands in life, of course. I mean, everyone lives a full life and has so many demands and pulls. But when you're more intentional about where you give your energy, it's incredible how that changes things for you. And I say one of my slogans on the back of the book is stop doing more, start choosing better.
Yes. 100%. I love that. Because yeah, it's not about doing more. It's about doing the right things, doing the effective
Mhm.
things. So
Right.
yeah, I think that's fantastic. Erin, this has been a great conversation, and I think you've hit on a lot of important things that we as leaders need to do and people need to do, whether at work or outside of work, because all these concepts apply to your family just as much as they do to the office. And I think that's really important that people realize that things you're doing here also work there. And, and I think that's fantastic. How can people pick up a copy of the book, learn more about what you're doing, and connect with you online?
Sure. So my website, erincoupe.com, it's erincoupe.com, has all the details and all the other things that I offer. The book is available on any online retailer from Amazon to Barnes& and Noble, Books A Million, you name it. If you want to buy more than 2 copies, you can buy them on my website at a little bit of a discount, also signed with a bookmark. And that's probably the best way. I also am on Instagram. I do a lot on LinkedIn. So if you're on LinkedIn, you can find me there. Instagram is authentically EC, which I'm sure you'll share in the show notes.
Awesome. Yeah, I will definitely do that. I'll link all this up in the show notes at geekleader.com so people can go there and click through. And Erin, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, John. This was fun.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Please go to geekleader.com to learn more about what this guest is up to, click on their links, and connect with them online. I would also greatly appreciate it if you could leave me a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. And make sure you've subscribed if you haven't already. And if you feel so inclined, you can leave me a tip by going to geekleader.com/tip.